All right.
All right, welcome back to the second episode of the JSR Dungeon podcast. We have a name now. So
Woo!
we're following right after the second episode of JSR the Traders. I'm again your host Jeremy, and then everybody else can reintroduce.
Charlie's here again.
And Ava.
And Emily, hello.
And once again, Ava's brought on because she is the only one on our now production team that has no idea what goes on in this game. So she brings a fresh perspective and lets us know everything that she thinks as a viewer. So right now we're coming off of a very what do you want to say? A very interesting episode. It was a lot.
Spicy.
It was a spicy episode. A lot was going on. We went from tiebreakers, we went from call outs, I think should we just introduce Sky first and just bring her along for the ride?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we saw that Sky gets banished, and we also saw that Claudine gets murdered, but Claudine
Yeah.
can't join us today.
Yeah.
But
Well,
Sky
actually,
was unfortunately banished in a tie vote
In the
and
revote.
and a revote. And so we're gonna bring Sky in, get some thoughts from her, and see what everyone else thought of the episode.
yeah, and I guess right before we do bring Sky in, Claudine, like you just said, she couldn't make it, but she did leave us a voice note.
Oh, Mom.
All right, so here were her final words. Let me get it for you.
I can't
Maybe
hear
we
it.
can't hear that.
That's the point. There was nothing. She didn't say anything.
Oh, not
So
that
just
good.
just like the show, she had nothing to say, but we
Oh.
appreciate her presence and she was a great addition. So now we're gonna let in Sky, who was banished, and we'll talk about everything that happened in the episode with Sky. So without further ado, let's see if she's ready.
Welcome, Queen. Oh, she probably can't hear yet. Oh, there she is. It's Queen
Queen
Sky.
Sky on ball.
Hey!
Yes, yes. Welcome,
Uh,
welcome, welcome.
wow. So Sky, this game happened back in February. For those that don't know,
Been
so
a minute.
this was a while ago, but reliving that episode, let's before we get into any details, how do you feel after reliving that episode?
I definitely felt like it brought back a lot of unstable memories, to be honest. A lot of confusion because yeah, I was definitely really nervous and I think that you could tell for sure. So it
Yeah.
was great.
Well, I mean, you were like a spearhead the entire episode. Not only did you win a shield, but kind of going off of Baylor's Danny theories, you were one of the people who were spreading that theory about Danny. Why do you think you were so set on Danny?
I think it was one of those things where I haven't played like a trader's game like that before, and so I didn't really know what to do as a faithful. And so it was more or less just me like trying to figure out how to be a good faithful. And whenever that name started coming up, I was like, well, if we don't have anything else to go off of, I don't know how to play this game. So I'm gonna run with it.
Mm.
But I didn't
So
want to be one of
we
the quiet ones either.
so we start the episode and we find out that Claudine is murdered. What
Mhm.
are your first thoughts?
Well, she wasn't really around. So, I mean, it was kind of like, oh, okay, easy murder, get it, whatever. Honestly, like as a trader, I probably would have done the same thing because it's an easy thing. It keeps people off your back. There's no real thing to go off of, so they can pretty much just open the door and do whatever they want at that point.
Hmm.
Mm.
Do you think that her
Uh,
exit interview had a lot to say? Like, do you think she gave good insight in her exit interview?
Oh yeah, I think she was flawless. It was great. So much information.
right.
Well,
So then we
I do
go
want to
into the
bring up something.
mission, and this mission was which one?
It was
The right and left.
the
The
bridge,
glass bridge.
the right and left.
The
Oh,
bridge.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And Sky, I believe she got her shield. I think she was the last person to get the shield, right after
Okay.
Baylor and then Keisha. But she
Baylor.
got the shield nonetheless. So she was, had she survived that round table, she would have been in the next round. But we'll get to
Okay.
the round table in a little bit too. I just forgot what I was going to ask. Oh, I remember what I wanted to ask. Um, in this, when Ava was watching this, and this was a live view, I want to bring this up. I want to bring this up. She said, "Bye. These people are pissing me off. I need Sky to die." Sky thoughts?
Ava!
Okay, listen. Okay, so here's my thought process. I I don't know if you watched the last podcast, but I have not watched any this season. I don't know anything. I don't know who wins, so I'm watching it live with the rest of the audience. But I just felt like you were saying too much, and I think
Your peppermint moment.
no, this was during the breakout rooms when you were like in a room with Nick and Baylor, and I just was like, oh no, like she's just gonna say too much and get a target on her back. I don't know. I was just stressed, and I was like, you know what? For the faithful sake, I just need her to die. I just need her to die because this is too much. But then you got voted at the round table, which I was not expecting at all, to be honest. I thought you were gonna get a few stray votes, which I guess like you did get votes because there were so many stray votes. I think if a lot of the people who were voting random people voted for Danny instead, you obviously would have been fine. I think they would have voted for him over you before the little slip up. But I was like, oh girl, like please be quiet, please. Please.
Yeah, and a lot of that was just because I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, I felt like I had to give information or I had to like try. And I don't do well with awkward silence either. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not just gonna sit in a room when we have all this time to talk to not talk. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I
that's what I
guess
love about you too, Sky, is you were actually one of the first people who responded to the call when we sent out invitations for the game. And almost right away, you were sending in your intro video, and I'm like, oh, she's gonna bring the energy. And you did. You brought that, and a lot of people picked up on that too. I know Baylor was going around telling people that he's like, oh, she could never be a traitor. She's too happy. She's too bubbly, this, and that. But what I thought was interesting with that was Keisha took Baylor saying that in the roundtable and completely flipped it on you. And that's how you got votes. Keisha,
Mhm.
as a trader, was telling people what Baylor said, but just twisting it and saying Baylor said you had a different energy, you know? And I don't know, do you think that was like a smart play by Keisha?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think that any chance that you get as a trader, now that I'm more familiar with trader games, I any chance you get as a trader to low key kind of turn it on anybody else but yourself and your other traders, you're gonna take every opportunity you can. And I think that she was really smart with how she worded it, and she wasn't too loud about it. She was very
Right.
like smooth with it, and I think that
Mhm.
that was brilliant. Yeah, I think it was really smart.
So based off these two episodes, and this is for everybody, how do you feel that the two traders are doing so far? I mean, we know Justice accepted her recruitment, but we haven't been able to see her play as a trader yet. But how have
Mhm.
Keisha and Carson been doing?
I think Keisha is really good. I think she's really good at not making herself an outwardly person, but talking just enough that she knows exactly what she's doing. Carson, on the other hand, I have some qualms with Carson. Obviously, like before this game even started, we were in the other game, and so we already had like this kind of initial beef with each other.
JSR
However,
Viver, for anybody wondering.
yeah, JSR Viber, go play.
I'm with
So
this guy.
but yeah, I think that the way that he was speaking, I was like, this is really interesting. And I noticed that Theo even said something in one of the breakout rooms. He even mentioned something about Carson, and I was like, he should have ran with that because even watching Carson and watching how he was speaking in the main chat, I was like, this is really interesting because he's talking a little too much as a trader. Like I was talking a lot, but he was being weird about it.
Yeah, and I think that in Carson's defense, it worked well in his favor because that's just what everyone expects from Carson. I feel like he wasn't acting out in a way that was like not normal for Carson. Like, sure, as like a trader, it might have looked a little bit more suspicious, but I think that with who Carson is and the character that he has developed, it didn't look unnatural for what we would expect from him.
Mhm.
Yeah, but not everybody in the game would know Carson.
Not everybody, but I think just enough people in the game knew Carson to where it didn't rise suspicion early on.
Well, to Sky's point too, like Theo said that Carson is usually a villain. I know in the first episode, Alicia said that Carson is usually a snake. So it is interesting that they were teetering with the idea of whether to take those biases and bring it to the game and not.
Mhm.
So I think
Or
that's
just trust him at his word,
right.
Mm.
which I think is definitely interesting because like everyone has like a few people have noticed like, oh, Carson is a little villainous, is a little snaky, is, a little cutthroat in the past, but he's still my friend and I still trust him. And I feel like that is Carson at his core is they know that he's willing to do anything and everything, but they still like him.
Well,
So
I
they're
mean,
like,
that was like that kind of goes with like my personal relationship with Nick too, right? Because every game that I play, like everybody knows, like I'm super loyal to Nick. Nick is loyal to me to a fault. But it would have been the same thing had Nick been a traitor or whatever the case may be. I probably would have been in the same boat as most of those people with Carson, where I'd been like, well, he can be a little sneaky, but like, So I do kind of see that from that perspective of like, you know Carson too. So
mhm. So you win your shield.
Mhm.
What was your ultimate goal going into break rooms and then the round table?
I think my biggest thing was just trying to number one, watching people's reactions. Watching how they were speaking to people, how they were talking in certain rooms or what they were saying in the main rooms. And then the next thing I was looking at too was who was talking and who wasn't. Because obviously, like, yes, I was talking a lot, but I knew I was unfaithful. So I was like, surely, again, I'll preface like I'm not familiar with traders a whole lot, but as a faithful, I'm like, okay, so I'm willing to give all this information. Who else is willing to give information? Like, who else is willing to speak up or to say something, or to defend somebody or something like that? Like, that's kind of what I was looking for.
Mhm.
So Sky, and then we're gonna get a little into this. This is maybe where your downfall leads.
Ooh.
For in the first part of that breakout rooms, we see you tell, I think it was Marissa in the room, Baylor in the room,
Mhm.
Justice, a couple others. You said, and I quote, "I'm not a faithful."
No.
Peppermint moment, yes.
So obviously, I think anyone with an outside perspective can see you were joking in that moment. Uh,
Mhm.
but do you think that telling people, even as a joke, that you're not a faithful is necessarily going to help?
I like that you're I like that you're laughing because you know the answer. Yeah, I definitely messed up for sure. Because this is definitely not the game that you want to kind of like joke around in. And I've actually played other trader games where I've like clocked people for that because I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. It's not funny. Because it's hard because you don't know who to trust or what people are saying to you is true. You don't know if like, hey, I got your back, but do you really? Like, are you gonna kill me next round? Kind of thing. So, yeah, I definitely feel like that was for sure the biggest. I mean, that was my downfall, 100%.
Well,
So,
well,
well, it wasn't.
it was definitely a thorn, but you definitely doubled down on it in the tie-breaking vote, which, by the way, a tie-breaking vote in the first round is insane. I don't think any of us were prepared for that. Um,
How did you react to that? Like, what was your reaction of I'm campaigning to stay, and it was a tie against Bill,
no, against Danny.
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 Yeah.
So didn't you go? I think we're both faithfuls, or we're both traitors or something.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think that I feel like we're both traitor.
Yeah,
And
you
I was
said
like,
low key, I
oh
think
my
we're both
gosh.
perfect.
I was like, guys, I've
So
been
how
faithful.
did you react to realizing that you were really about to have to plead for your life?
Yeah, honestly, my first reaction is these people are so stupid. But like looking back on it and really analyzing the things that I was saying, I totally get it. Like I probably would have done the same thing. Somebody would have slipped up and I would have been like, "Yep, that's a traitor." So I don't blame them. I don't feel like, I feel like that was a good call from a perspective of like this is all the knowledge that we have. I was not ready to plead for my life, not gonna lie, because the entire time, obviously, we've been talking about Danny this whole time.
Mhm.
So when my name starts to come up, I am just like,
So you were caught off guard. You didn't realize you were going to get votes.
right, yeah, exactly. Like I was like, I had no idea. And so it was very much like I was panicking because I was like, I know I'm a faithful. And so I'm like, how do I express this to you guys? Like, how do I tell you guys that I am actually a faithful? So yeah, it was definitely a panicking moment for me.
I do want to talk about your initial votes before the tiebreaker. because there was for me a little bit of surprise. Obviously we know that Keisha had kind of jump started that conversation on you, but Javen took it and ran. Javen was double downing on the idea that you probably were not good. And your votes were Leek, Javen, Jendea, Danny, and Bill. But let's before we get into Bill's vote, I want to talk about Leek's vote. So watching Leek's vote back, I think production needed to roll the tapes back because I'm
I
looking.
think we went. He definitely changed
I'm watching.
it.
I'm watching it back. Sky voted for Leak, and all of a sudden I see Leak.
Right. Like literally we watched it and we go, should we say something or not?
It's like it's already happened. So what can we do now? But I definitely think Leak was a little sus with his Sky vote, which totally could have changed the game had his original,
Yeah.
But to that point too, I mean, we'll get to. I mean, we can get to it now. But why didn't you vote Danny?
Um, Honestly, because the more that Danny kept speaking and the more that people were willing to jump on the Danny train, I just felt like I was like, I feel like Danny is a faithful. And I couldn't bring myself to actually vote for Danny. So I was like, let me just throw a vote because, like I said, I didn't know I was getting votes. Like, yes, my name was kind of out there, but it was more or less Danny. And so I was like, let me just throw my vote because I really don't believe that Danny, I want to give Danny another chance. So like that was
Mhm.
my thought process.
Okay. Well, Javen is again no surprise, but what do you
Mhm.
think about that whole Javen and Danny duo kind of protecting each other?
Yeah, I don't really think anything of it to be honest because I felt like I understood where Jabin was coming from where he just didn't want to like jump on the bandwagon, I guess if that makes sense.
Does anybody else on production have any thoughts about that?
No, I mean, I agree with Sky, but didn't Sky, Bill voted for Sky, and didn't
And
y'all?
that was some tea. It was
Yeah, Sky had a
Sky
reaction.
did not like that.
Let's
The,
segue
the,
into that.
the
Yeah,
first
that was
reaction, she
crazy.
went, "Wow." Sky was mad at Bill. What happened there?
Yeah, so obviously Bill is somebody again, kind of like a Nick to me, right? Somebody that in games that we've played, we've been pretty loyal. I felt like I could tell if Bill, out of all people, I was like, I can tell if you're a faithful or not. And for him to not know me well enough was kind of like is what threw me off because I was like, why would you think that I'm a traitor. Like I'm so confused. So yeah, it definitely threw me that specific
So
vote
you
threw me.
don't think that it was a smart vote for him?
Um,
Like, do
I
you
don't
think that he made the correct move? Like, do you think he made a smart move game wise? And like, if you take your emotion out of it,
Yeah, assuming, I mean, if he's trying to just stay safe and in the game, then yes. If he's gonna jump on that bandwagon and just be like, push himself, like separate himself from me, because had I not gone, it would have been really smart for us to not be penned as like people working together, things like that. So I do get it from that perspective, if that's what he was trying to do. Um, so yeah, I mean, taking all the emotions out of it, yes.
but it's Sky, and we know she can't.
Well, I mean,
I'm a
his
little emotional.
in the tiebreaker, you said "fuck you, Bill." So, is there? What do you think post this game? Are you guys? And but Bill did say he was upset about voting you out. He said you were one of his close friends, but he still got
Yeah.
that "fuck you." So I don't know. Are you guys vibing
I did say I was joking after though. I did say I was joking.
now?
Yeah, no, yeah, I didn't actually mean it.
Okay. I guess you're not getting those rivals call then. You guys are best friends. Um, but okay, so that's pretty much it. For at least you're running the game. I think we'll talk about the general sense of the game a little bit too. But you went out, 9-3, I believe it was. The only people that didn't vote for you in the tiebreaker were Justice, Alicia, and Theo. Do you have any thoughts on them protecting you, or do they just have to
I don't
play
know
by
if it was a
the
protection or if it was just they just kept their vote.
Yeah.
Like, let's be so for real. I do
Do you
think
think it was the smart move to keep you or to lose you over Danny?
no,
Because
because
do you feel like you were the bigger target than Danny was. Because at this point, Danny has been the only suspicious person that
Mhm.
they really have talked about, and your name just kind of got brought up like right at that like last 2 minutes of the round of the breakout rooms. So do you feel like they made the smart move in going with you, or do you feel like the only reason they started going with you is because of those slip ups of the mouth that you kept having?
Yeah, I definitely feel like they only started going towards me because of the opportunities like of me slipping up, things like that. I don't think that it's really smart to get rid of somebody like me this early, only because I could have been a shield for a lot of the other faithfuls. Um, and if you're playing this game for yourself, which you kind of have to for the most part, like eventually, like you have to play this game for yourself. Um, it's obviously smarter to keep somebody around who's going to be more talkative than you and who's going to put themselves out there more. And I think as far as the traders go, I would think that you would want to keep somebody around like that because it allows them to be a target and allows them to be somebody that will always be looked at before you. So like you can continue to do what you need to do. Like Keisha being so quiet, also being subtle about what she was doing. I mean, obviously no one was suspecting Carson over me, and he was talking just as much. But I think that because I did slip up, it definitely messed my game up for sure.
Mhm.
All right. Well, and then one little question before we move on to the general sense for you, Sky. Sky, what's your dog's name? We saw your dog in this
Oh my
episode.
gosh, Opal, come here. Her name is Opal. Come here, baby. She's right here. Oh my gosh, she's running away now. Oh, of course. Come here. Come here. Okay, well, she's running away, but her name is Opal. We play games together. That's how we do it. So if you get me, you get her. If you get her, you
Mm.
get me. That's just how it is.
Oh, she be taking calls.
Yeah, she do. She do be getting on those calls and she's like, "Hi guys."
Well, we'll see Opal for JSR the Traders too, right?
Oh, 100%.
All
She's
She's
right.
gotta go.
So let's ask some like general questions, like just what you thought of the game, stuff like that. Who were you the most excited to see, and who were you the most not excited to
I
see?
wonder
Like
who
if you
Sky
were
was
a
excited
trader,
to
if you
see.
were a
I
trader, who would you have
wonder.
been like, bitch, die?
Um, okay, obviously Nick, my number one ally in every game. Shocker, I know. And then I would probably say Alicia too. Because I really like Alicia. I like how she plays games and she's very sassy and I love it. I love everything about her. So like just being able to see her, I was just super excited about. Um, I would say the person I was least excited to see, I actually didn't know a lot of these people. I will put that out there too. There were a lot of these people that I had no idea who any of them were. I did make some connections with a couple people. Um, I would say probably Carson. He was the probably the one that I was least excited to see, right? Because he just screwed up my other game. So I was like, I don't want to talk to you. Um, so yeah, I would say
Do you
that's
think, do you think, like you saying Carson was your least favorite, do you think, obviously you got voted out at the round table. Do you think you could have seen a scenario where he like killed you or banished you? Do you think that
um
or would it have been too obvious, you think?
I don't think it would have been obvious for him just because again, a lot of these people didn't even know who I was or I didn't know who they were. And so I don't think anybody would have put two and two together unless it was like Bill or something that had also just played the game. So, but I think it would have been really hard just for one person to be like, well, we played this game, so it's just kind of like, yeah, I don't think it would have been difficult for him.
Who would you have killed if you were a traitor?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, who would have been your number one target
Honestly, guys,
other
like
than Carson?
so I'm one of those people that like my first kill is not going to be an easy kill. I definitely am the type that if I'm a secret trader, I'm taking a big hit. So I probably would have gone for somebody that I'm trying to think. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the cast, honestly. Can you send me the cast list? Um,
Oh, there it is.
oh, period. But I don't
Is
remember anybody's names except for the people that I still talk to.
We got,
Um, who
Carson,
was the
Justin.
guy? The guy that had the bookshelf behind him? Who was
Baylor.
Oh,
was
I
it
Baylor.
knew you were gonna
Baylor?
say that. I knew you were gonna say
Okay. Okay, yeah. Because I feel like he was the one, yeah, he was the one that I got close to throughout the game. But he was the one that I was like, constantly looking at, and I was like, oh, this guy's smart. Like he's gonna figure this out. Like I know he is. So he would probably be the first one that I would kill first.
Mm.
Yeah, but a few people were sussing, and we'll kind of switch it over to general talk now too. But we saw that after the episode, people like Noel, Alicia were starting to suss Baylor. Baylor was starting to get some heat for his doings in the roundtable, and
Hmm.
I'm curious to see how that will play out. Does anybody have any thoughts on Baylor too?
I think Baylor was,
He won a shield as well, which I thought was
yeah, I feel like Baylor, I didn't get to watch the episode before we filmed this, but I feel like Baylor just is a talker, but he's like he's a smart talker. I feel like, and I feel like that is what people were picking up on is not only is this man talking a lot and he's leading a lot of the conversations, but he's making a lot of sense. Like
Hmm.
he's piecing things together that you're like, wow, I would not have thought of that. And so I feel like what Sky is saying is like, yeah, he is really smart, and that is a big threat. Like for a faithful, yeah, it'll be a good advantage. But as a trader, I would have been like, get this out, like get him out right now.
Well, what do you think about Keisha also getting a shield this round? Do you think it was smart for her to go after the shield? I know on the first episode, everyone was upset with Danny for going for a shield, and it made him look sus. So, do you guys think that Keisha and Baylor going for the shields are going to make them look sus, especially Keisha when she's a traitor?
I don't think Keisha as much because, like I said, she's very good at like speaking and just the way she was moving. I don't think that it's gonna do anything or damage her game in that sense. And I think that because three of us got the shield instead of one person,
And
um,
and to
so
add to that is, I think everybody was afraid to get a shield this mission. I think everybody was afraid to like go for it. So I feel like it was like they didn't start going for it until the end. Like because they were all working together to get across, and so it was just like, oh, the shields are left. Like who's gonna claim them, kind of thing. Um, so I feel like they were less like less suspicious on people who were taking the shields because it just ended up being like three of the like last five people that competed.
Mhm. Yeah. I think I mean, it is smart for at least one trader, I felt like, to get a shield because it obviously takes away from the thought of like, oh, these people didn't get a shield, they must feel really safe, kind of thing.
Right. Well, then, if that's our thoughts on that, let's talk about some of the strategy that went on outside of, the whole Sky everything what happened with Sky. We saw
Whoops.
in the breakout rooms, I was impressed with Javen saying that he said anyone who gets jumped at this round table is not a traitor. And I think that rang true with people, but then they still went and jumped people. But it did for the at least the initial vote. The vote was split between one, two, three, four, five, six, seven different people. So I think it worked in that sense. But I don't know. What do y'all think? Do y'all think that rings true that the person who gets jumped early on is probably not a traitor?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think in any season I've watched, like of the actual show or orgs I've hosted or watched of the traders, the first vote has ever been a trader. I think the odds are so slim because the cast size is so big. Like it's a 1 in 17 or 1 in 16 shot. Or I guess there's three of them, 3 in 16 shot. Uh, me doing math, a 3 in 16 shot of getting it right. So my math major bestie laughing at me. um, but I don't know. I think it's weird. If I was in the trader's shoes, I feel like I would have flipped the narrative and probably let Claudine go at the round table because I feel like that would have been a pretty easy consensus for everyone to kind of jump on if she was still around. And maybe that was their idea is if they take the easy vote out, somebody bigger will go. But I think if I had the chance to take it into my own hands, I would have made a bigger move. That's why I was like really on the Nick G was dying train. I thought that would have been such a smart first kill. I said it at the end of the podcast the other day that I think Nick's gonna die really early. I'll be kind of shocked if he doesn't. I think again he'll be a murder and not a vote out. But I don't know. I think It is what it is. I think Sky was robbed, to be honest, even though I wanted her to die.
You wanted her to die.
Well, I agree with that sentiment. I think that Claudine was like so obviously the faithful's least favorite person. We saw confessionals where the faithfuls were saying they wanted Claudine to die. That was from Justice when she was a faithful. So I think it would have been the smartest move to keep her around and get her out.
Mhm.
I think on like the other hand, I think they were like oh like she like clearly just like wasn't really trying, so it's kind of like okay, like let's like not keep someone here like who isn't gonna benefit me whatsoever and is just kind of there. I think, I mean, like, which I kind of appreciate because it gives people, the ones who actually like really want to play, like Sky and all the other ones, like the chance to play at least if another,
Yeah.
you know.
I
Mhm.
feel like with a game like this, it is so much harder to like make a deep run into the game. Like there's so much politics and there's so much strategy that goes in like social game that goes into like being able to make yourself someone that's going to be kept around. It is so much harder than any game that I've ever played. And yeah, and so like because of the fact that like two people go around, that's
Mhm.
insane. Like it's just so much harder to like get like be that person that's going to be continuously staying. And so you're right. You're like, do they make the easy moves? But then it's like, yeah, if you keep making the easy moves, you're just going to keep the threats in the game. So I feel like was Sky an easy vote for the banishment? Probably. Could she have been kept around? Probably. But I think it was a good move to kill Claudine.
Mhm.
Well, we'll move on to some other strategy from the traders as well. Carson was trying to plant the seeds in the breakout rooms that the quiet people are who should be targeted. He said that the people who throw at a target in the beginning of the round table are probably not going to be a trader because they're not going to want to put themselves out there. But do you think that? And then well, we saw Marissa defend the quiet people. She said, just because I'm quiet doesn't mean I'm a traitor. It just means maybe I'm nervous, maybe I'm not an outgoing personality. Do we think there's any validity in trying to quiet the quiet people, or do we have to have discernment in what's quiet and what's strategy?
Well, I
Mm.
think
That's
it,
gonna
go ahead,
that
Sky.
sorry. I feel like the whole quiet thing is such a term used way too often in the community because like you there are so many times, especially on these kind of games, where it's like it's super fast paced. So like you have to be ready. And like if there's everybody's talking at the same time, sometimes some people like just literally have nothing to contribute. And that's just not because they don't, it's just because what are they get supposed to say? Hi, how are you? Like, if they don't have anything to contribute, I don't think we should like necessarily go after them just because they don't have anything. But I do think at some point they will have to speak. At some point, the quiet thing does come into play. But this early on, when there's so many of us, and like you have people like me and Carson and other people that are like very talkative, trying to figure things out, then yes, they're going to sit back and they're going to watch and they're going to figure out, okay, is Sky a traitor? Is this person a traitor? Like, I'm trying to figure this out just as much as everybody else.
I
Yeah.
will say to counter that, because, and you kind of already mentioned it too, of like, it was so early on, and like, you have to like, they might not have something in that moment, but I think the way that people were, like you said, also is it's so fast paced. And at
Mhm.
this point, you guys have had two missions and two breakout rooms, like two sessions of breakout rooms. So you guys have had multiple opportunities to like talk game, talk strategy, like throw out things. So I feel like with the way that people were viewing it at this point is they're like, okay, if you haven't said anything by now, you're not contributing anything by now, that is suspicious. And I feel like I kind of agree with that of like, yeah, sure, you might not be want to be the person that's like talking the most or like expressing the most in conversations, but if at this point we've been playing the game for a few hours and you haven't really been adding anything, that's a little suspicious. And I feel like that's kind of where Carson was, is like, yeah, sure, you may talk here and there, but if you're not adding things to the conversation, that's I feel like where Carson was.
And
And
I
I
think
feel like other people that were agreeing with Carson.
Well, Alicia even made it a point to say what you guys are saying. You know, Alicia said, I don't have anything to contribute, so I'm not going to say anything. But in my head, if I was a trader, I'd be looking at the quiet people too, like Marissa, like Alicia, like, okay, if y'all aren't going to say anything, y'all might end up, like you're always saying, might end up looking faithful because you have nothing to contribute. So I might just kill you, you know? I don't know. It's a lot to think about as a trader, but
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
I
it's
would
such
target
a
the quiet
yeah.
people.
It's so political that like you have to be making the right move. Like you have to be to the point where like what you're saying like it
Mhm.
doesn't even become social game anymore. It becomes political game. Like you have to like be a politician and like yeah. So I totally get it. Of like it's such a complicated format that we like. I feel like no one has like made a good game play to base it off of. Um, that you have to just really do everything. You can't just go about it in one way. Like you have to be physical, you have to be political, you have to be strategic, you have to be social, and you can't just rely on one, which is like so hard to do.
I think that all ties back to what I said last episode is this is such a polarizing cast in terms of personality. We don't really have many players that are very well balanced in the knowing when they need to talk, like because we have people who are those big personalities and we have the people who are just like they're just quiet. That's just who they are. That's how they play. They're under the radar players. And so I think this early on, I agree it's okay to be quiet just because there are so many voices and you can only listen to so many people. And so just trying to figure out where you fit into this equation without being too different. Like we praise Carson for playing the same way that he always does, even though he is a traitor and there is that target on his back. It's hidden for now, but he's playing the same way he always does, and nobody has a problem with that. But the people who are quiet, they're being looked at for being quiet, but that's just how they play. So it's just is that double standard of it's okay when the loud people do it because they're continuing to do it because they're providing entertainment, but entertainment isn't going to win you the game. Strategy is going to. And so I think that it's okay for people to kind of take a back seat for the first few round tables. But like Alicia said, she was like, I'm not going to speak if I don't have anything of substance to say. And I think that's such a good counter to people being like, you're so quiet. Well, like, girl, if people are already saying what I'm saying, if I piggyback on it, people are going to be like, oh, you're just being agreeable. I see that all the time in the creators game that I host. People are always like, oh, you're just agreeing to agree. Like, you're just saying something to say something. So, like, I think these early stages of the game is all about everyone finding their footing, but the focus is more so on those people who choose to be reserved. And so I think that stigma kind of needs to like be kicked to the curb a bit, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I think the one person who's doing a good job of doing both is Baylor. I said it last episode too. I think he's very, very intentional with what he does and what he says. And I think he is doing it in a way to almost be like provocative. Like he wants people to respond. He wants to hear what people are saying. So he's saying things to garner those responses and then use what they're saying to figure things out. He's not trying to say the things like he's not trying to figure things out. He's trying to use the responses as his information. I think that's so smart. Um and I think if we see Nick make it past a few more roundtables, I think he'll adapt into that same sort of social strategy as well.
Yeah, for me, what it looks like, comparing it to the actual Trader show, Baylor's strategy kind of reminds me of Pete. What's his name? Pete, the Bachelor, right? Where he's just like
Mm-hmm.
openly speaking about everything. He's bringing what his thoughts to the table, and I feel like every game of the Traders I've seen, they have that outspoken faithful always, and I feel like Baylor is fitting that cast type for the moment. But what do we think about Danny's future in the game? He almost went home in a tie. So,
Once your name is said once in a roundtable, your name is the one that's going the next one. So I would not be surprised if he's the next to go.
I don't know. We've seen some people crawl out of deep holes, but Ava, you've never
Yeah.
seen. So what do you think will happen?
I think honestly, like I think Sky's fuck up and being like, oh, I think like we're both traitors. Like on even though it was on accident and her being banished and being a faithful, I would take that as like, okay, she was just like saying shit to say shit. So in my mind, I feel like that would give me a little bit of clearance with Danny. Just because obviously it's not based in fact. But I think Danny has surrounded himself with obviously Javen, and I think Javen's going to be a really good ally. And I think he's going to take a brunt force of the targeting for their duo specifically, just because I feel like he's going to be more outspoken for longer, just because he doesn't have that target on his back like Danny does. So I could see Danny going a few more round tables, but I think if we get to a place in the season where we don't have a ton of basis to go off of, I think people will circle back and be like, okay, well, Danny went right back under the radar after he was the number one target week one. So I think they'll look at him. But I think from what I've watched and like listened about Danny, I think he'll probably be smart enough to know that he does need to take that back seat in this next episode and not try to do too much. So hopefully we see him at least make episode 4.
Okay. Well, we'll move on to the last person that I think we should talk about for the podcast, and that is the new traitor recruit. We haven't talked much about her yet. Justice, we saw, was recruited. We saw she accepted the recruitment. She hasn't met the fellow traitors yet, so she spent this whole episode not knowing who she's working with. But how do we feel about Justice being the recruit? Is she a good recruit? Do you think she'll do well?
I think she'll do
Um,
good. I think what was important for her this episode is I think Keisha and Carson both played pretty pivotal roles in how the roundtable went down. And we didn't really hear much from her at the roundtable, this one specifically. And so I think that'll be good for her moving forward if she can continue to do that and let Keisha and Carson be the talkers to the public, like ringleaders of the faithful, you could say, and kind of just let her be agreeable and be kind of somebody who can float back and forth. And I think that's a really underrated trader strategy. I think very recently in trader media, we've seen a lot of like traders throwing traders and they've been very selfish. And so I think her coming into this, she is going to be more of a team player than the other two will be. And we touched on that a little bit in the intro episode. So I think honestly, like 10 out of 10, I think she played this episode the best out of all the traders, even though Keisha and Carson didn't necessarily do anything wrong. I just think Justice did a good job of solidifying her position and just continuing how she was on day one. And I think again, the people who were talking about her very highly. And so I don't think she did anything necessarily to raise any additional red flags or put any additional suspicions onto her. So I think she's doing great. Maybe that will change once she finds out who her fellow traders are, but I have very high hopes for her.
Yeah, I'm interested to see though, because I want to see if she gets like nervous
Mm.
and kind of breaks down a little bit. Because I could tell in the round table, I don't know if it was the round table or at some point she was speaking and it felt like she was trying too hard a little bit.
Mm.
So I don't know if that's gonna affect her, but I think she's great. Like Ava said, she was being spoken of highly, and I think that she has a really good potential of like flying under the radar and doing a lot of dirty work and not even being sus for it. But I
Mm.
think once if she ever does get sus, then like I'm interested to see if she breaks.
Yeah. I feel like I could see that happening because we see that a lot where a trader's playing really well and they slip up, whether it's, they slip of the tongue or they get caught doing something and they don't have a foundation to stand on. They can't defend themselves. So that will be definitely interesting because she's playing very well. But you can only play so well until you need to defend yourself. And we've all seen where people can't defend themselves and they can't plead and they go home. So that definitely will be interesting to see.
Okay, well, yeah, she didn't say much at this roundtable. I did notice that, but in her voting, she made it a point to say that she was voting for Noelle because of the bagel. Uh, so that's episode 2. We've seen this bagel mentioned a couple times now. Do you think that is a good thing for her to be continuing on with? I don't know. This is only the beginning of the bagel. We're going to be seeing more about this bagel. So what do you think? Is that a good strategy to be as a trader to have like basically have an enemy, you know? Like you pick an enemy and have somebody that you're in contention with. Do you think that's a good strategy to continue forward, even if it's about a bagel?
I think it's a silly thing to latch onto, but I also think it's smart to have one thing to latch onto. And not to mention, this is something that everyone can confirm and is aware of. It's not something where it's like, oh yeah, Sky said this in the breakout room. Like you can't lie about it. Everyone knows about it. Everyone's aware. So I think even if she wasn't a traitor, I feel like it's a good strategy. You're latching onto something that is public knowledge. Everyone knows. You're not necessarily causing waves because you're not pushing. She never pushed Noelle's name. It was just a personal reason for her. Is that going to be acceptable for 7 roundtables in a row? Probably fucking not. But for this early game, like we've been saying pretty repetitively, you're grasping at straws here. You're not having many things that are going to be standing out this early on. People, there's so many places to hide, so many people to hide behind. So I don't necessarily think it's a terrible thing. Is it going to be a long-term strategy for her? I hope not. But I guess, like you said, we'll see Bagelgate sticking around.
I think it's such a funny, silly little thing to like build a rivalry with. And that's coming from someone who built like 3 different rivalries in a little season and voted for them every single time. So I just think it's really funny. I think it's so funny. I think it's a good strategy because it shows other faithfuls like I'm not making a smart voting move. So a faithful could look at that and being like, oh, they're not voting with us. They're voting like a stupid reason. So I feel like that's not suspicious to me. But then as a trader, it's like I'm not I'm not gonna like if let's say if she voted someone else like Leak or if she voted for someone else and then that person dies, that can look a little suspicious. So I feel like she's making a good move because I don't think that in her mind that they were going to kill Noelle anytime soon, but it's not going to raise as much suspicion because of the fact that she's already built that rivalry from the start.
I do agree with that standpoint in that it is like, and like what Ava said, it's public. People know about her suspicions about this bagel. So it probably doesn't look as suspicious. Whereas Keisha voting for Nick in this round with no lead up to it, I think is a lot more suspicious. So I think,
That's a bold throw vote. Like that's a bold vote.
yeah. And even Nick was in his confessional was saying that he's sus of Keisha now because of it. I think, I mean, and Carson also voted for Noel this round. So it's just like they had no lead up to their votes. I feel like that's suspicious to me as a faithful. The smaller
Wait, Carson voted for who?
Noel,
Noelle.
Well,
which I mean, maybe he's trying to pair up with Justice and show some camaraderie, but I feel like I don't know. I'm as a faithful, I would be looking at the throwaway votes with no explanation first.
Mm-hmm. It is very strange when there was like a pretty clear path to 2 people. There was very clear suspicion on Danny and very clear suspicion on Sky for people to just kind of rogue vote. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense, especially like all 3 of our traders rogue voted. Not a single one of them voted in for either of the 2 people who were catching a lot of heat. Um, I don't know. I think I agree with you that Keisha voting for Nick is very. I just think it was dumb. I don't know if Keisha and Nick really know each other or have played together prior to this. I doubt that they have. So I think if Keisha knew more of the insulation that he had within the cast from all of his pregame connections, I feel like she probably would have voted a little bit differently. Just because if Nick wants to rally numbers against someone, he's going to do it, and he's going to do it pretty easily. So I think that was a really ballsy move by her. But of course, we know what she doesn't know, and so I doubt it was like, I don't know, very strange move, but Keisha mom, maybe she slayed.
All right, well, I think that's all we really have. Does anybody have any last insights before we wrap this up?
No, I'm good.
I just have something funny. It's not really like insight, but earlier in the episode, Sky was like, everyone's like grasping at straws and all this random shit. Like, there's no basis for all of it. And then that's why she got fucking voted out. I was like, girl, why'd you manifest it? Like, come on.
I really did. Oh my gosh. I liked I think my favorite part was at the end. Theo was like, "Girl, you should have cried." And I was like, "Oh my gosh."
You
For
should
anyone who
have.
doesn't know,
guys,
so
that's
in
your
Trader
that's your
Day, I
go-to.
have been
It
married.
works.
So,
Yeah.
before we go, who who is well, I guess we can ask Ava and Sky. Who do you think dies next? Who do you think gets banished next? And at this point, who is your winner pick?
Don't give the winner picks. I think you might know the winner.
I actually don't remember anything. I don't know. Wait, who death first, right? Uh, I don't know. I mean, if they're smart, they'll kill Baylor. But I don't know if they're gonna, I don't know if they've caught on to him yet. And then I think banishment, I don't think that they're gonna go back to Danny, to be honest. I really don't. I think that just me leaving and saying what I said kind of solidifies, in my opinion. Like it would for me anyway. I'd be like, okay, well, Danny has to be a faithful. Like there's no way. So I don't know. I think that they'll probably I hope they go after Carson. I hope Carson just talks more now that I'm not there. I hope that he just keeps talking more. And then winner pick. Honestly, I okay. At the time, I didn't know who Keisha was. I just played a game where she was on prod, so obviously I got all this time with her. I would love to see a Keisha win. I'm not gonna lie, because I love her and I like how she's playing. But I also wouldn't mind an Alicia win either, because like I said, I'm a huge
Okay.
Alicia stan, so I I love her as well. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
All right. And Ava, you're up.
I should have thought about this before we started recording. Um, Murder. I feel like they'll make a bigger move than they did this round. I don't think they'll go an easy route again. So I think it's gonna be a JSR, like a prominent JSR person. So I would say maybe I don't want it to be Alicia. Like I really, really don't. I have her as one of my winner picks from last episode. I could see it maybe being her or Theo. Um, I don't know. I could also maybe see it being Javen because Javen was a pretty big character in this episode and he rallied those votes against Sky pretty well. And pretty easily, honestly, too. So that would definitely concern me if I was a traitor. Banishment. Banishment's so hard because you don't get to see all the like everything go down before, but I think maybe oh god, I don't know. I was no, maybe Noelle. Maybe they'll jump Noelle for Bagelgate. I don't know if it will happen this early, but who knows? Oh, Jeremy smiled. I got it right. Okay.
I didn't even think about him being an option but yeah.
Yeah, and then winner pick
Bagelgate.
winner pick controversial. I'm gonna keep it the same, even though I just said Alicia might get killed. But I think my final fire was Alicia, Carson. I actually don't remember who else I picked. Alicia, Carson, Marissa. Oh, love her by the way. She didn't get much screen time, but I really do love her. I think she's gonna do really well. Marissa and I don't know. My third pick apparently you're irrelevant. So those are my winner picks for season or episode 2. Maybe they'll change next week.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty much all we have. Thank you so much, Sky, for joining us. Your presence will be missed in the show. You know, you really were a character for the time you were there. You also gave really good confessionals. Not everybody can say the same in the cast, no offense. But screen
Shut
time,
up.
screen time is based off of, what they're able to provide. And, Sky was providing while she was here. So we appreciate her time and
Dream
hopefully
Ascendant season 5 to see more of her.
Period. Watch my
Dream
confession.
Ascendant season 5.
very true. And hopefully we see you in more JSR projects in the future for whatever may exist. Who knows?
JSR Big Brother revival? Who heard that?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Never that.
But all right, thank you guys. That was a good time. Say goodbye. I'm gonna end this recording.
Bye.